This week on Podcast Perspectives, what's the most exciting thing about being acquired?
Starting a new chapter.
Wonder Media Network was just acquired by ACast. We have Shira Atkins, co-founder of Wonder Media Network, here to tell us what that means. Welcome, Shira.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Good to be here.
Big news, which we'll get into in a little bit. But before we do, can you give me a walkthrough of Wonder Media Network?
Of course. So we started Wonder Media Network about 6.5 years ago. Co-founded it with a dear friend of mine from college, Jenny Kaplan, former Bloomberg News journalist. And we set out initially to develop podcasts primarily focused on women's voices and underrepresented voices. We felt at the time that there was a real dearth of content that centered those voices within the audio space, and that lots of the sort of ills of digital media were being recreated in audio, and that we could be one of the good forces to adjust that. As we got started, we realized that there were also all sorts of issues around monetization and distribution. And so we started to think about alternate revenue streams and ended up developing a brand studio on top of our original content work and thinking about infusing our original content with really high touch premium sponsorships as a way to monetize them and also align with brands that could help us spread the good word. So we bootstrapped the business, and it was just me and Jenny for the first year. And once we started making some money, we started hiring people. And 6.5 years later, we've got a team of about 25 amazing women. And now we're embarking on this new chapter with ACast.
Congratulations. It's an incredible journey. You are a mission-driven company. You also have brands that come to you and they have goals that they want to hit that maybe don't always align with that mission. What's that balancing act look like?
We like working with great people. And I have found that, when we started this business, we didn't necessarily think that pharma communications would be one of our strong suits for a whole bunch of reasons. But our clients at Pfizer are some of our dearest people and completely mission aligned. And so we have stayed true to the tenets of our business. And especially given that so many of the people who work for us are here because of our mission, that we're not ever taking in business that is antithetical. That said, we all contain multitudes. And so I think, and I hope that the producers on the team would agree, that it's actually quite good for sharpening the mind to, work on the Brown Girls Guide to Politics in one breath, or, our podcast about abortion access in the other, and then also be doing internal communications for GE. I think the breadth and the diversity of content is also a reflection of some of our values around diversity. And of course, these are different pieces, but we want to be well-rounded both in as us as individuals and also as a business.
Do you have any examples or favorite moments of where your work has really made an impact?
The biggest piece of impact that I can speak of is just thinking about my team, gathering together such talented women from all parts of the media and advertising and journalistic ecosystem has felt really, really impactful, and particularly sort of weathering the storms of podcasting. Jenny and I, during COVID, we put our heads together and we were like, what is the best thing that we can do for the world right now? Keep our team employed. And so we just did everything we could to provide that impact. So, the people piece is definitely one. I would say, we've certainly had shows that have topped the charts, and that has felt like another kind of impact. We launched this true crime podcast, I Was Never There, a couple of years ago, and we spent a whole lot of money on it that we never got back. I still believe the IP is valuable. Um, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. Recognition feels really good, and people writing in to say that the content was impactful to them felt really good. And then I would say, we've developed some partnerships with world-class brands that have also pushed the brands to invest in content that they maybe don't traditionally. So the work that we did with Mercedes-Benz on Womanica, maybe not something that one might imagine could happen, but they were also incredible partners, and really, they funded a huge chunk of Womanica for a full year, which is a show that lifts up women's voices from history. So that felt pretty impactful too.
I like to think I have the same, thought process and ideas on that, but one thing in particular is the recognition is really what kind of drove you. I got an email about 10 years ago now when I was making my own show before Podglomerate. It was a show about writing, and, I didn't know who was listening. I got an email from a woman in Ireland who let me know that she listens while she milks her cows on the farm. And like, I never really
Wow.
understood, like, how much of an impact that made on me, but, like, here we are a decade later, and, like, I bring it up. These things that we do every day, like, really can make an impact. So, put a smile on someone's face. So, I would love to understand a little bit more about, your current business model, and maybe we should I don't know if this is changing with ACast, so, like, up until this moment,
Yeah.
are you a podcast production company, a network, a studio? Like, how do you define that?
It's such a good question. And as you know, our name is Wonder Media Network. And I think when we started the business, network also meant something slightly different. And also our aspiration was to predominantly produce original content. I don't think, as I said, we didn't set out to be like an external comms firm. We are a network in the sense that we have a network of shows that cross promote on one another, that are synergistic with one another. We sell packages and sponsorships across our network. For the most part, over the course of our business, all of our shows in network have also been produced by our team. There have been a few exceptions here or there. At this point, we are much more of a creative studio. That's how I define us. Yes, we do podcast production services, but I would say increasingly, and I think this will continue while we're at ACast, we do a lot of strategic and advisory work. We do media planning. We have an incredible art director on staff. We do design projects for partners. We have also developed storytelling initiatives that are not purely audio. We've done experiential, live event, digital. So we are a creative agency, creative studio where podcasting and audio storytelling is certainly our bread and butter. And we find that original content keeps us keeps us intellectually sharp and keeps us aware of the headwinds of podcasting writ large. And that makes us a better partner to our clients who are trying to develop original content of their own.
Do you consider yourself also like, kind of an incubator of talent or anything? You work with a lot of known entities.
Yeah, I do think we're an incubator of talent. We've also worked with, I mean, of course, like our people here.
Yeah. In this, I'm referencing like the hosts and that kind of thing.
We have worked with some extremely well-known talent like Candace Parker or Van Jones or, people like that. And then, the whole mission of WMN is to amplify underrepresented voices. And so when we first started the business, like the whole point was to not work with celebrities. And we stayed true to that and have continued to stay true to that for better or worse from a commercial perspective. Because as you know, the wave has shifted within podcasting. You can still find occasional breakout stars, but unless you're attached to sort of pre-existing celebrity or pre-existing network, it's just really hard. And of course, there are many, many indie podcasters that are developing beautiful content and have really amazing niche audiences, and that's fantastic. But even doing that is extremely challenging. So the majority of our hosts with whom we work and, creators who are perhaps like incubating the concepts and helping to write scripts and that sort of thing are like unknown. I'm using air quotes. But in that way, we're incubating, but I think we're also partnering. Like we need incubation too. On the original side. We're also still learning.
So what does like the show development process look like? We talked to Emily Rudder on your team,
Oh,
who
nice.
does a lot of that work on the show, 6 months ago, a year ago. And so we have a little bit of an understanding of that, but, like, from your point of view, because you're coming at this most of the time from brands who are, like, saying, like, "We wanna get in the space, but we don't necessarily know how," right?
Yeah. So Emily, who's phenomenal and has been with us for over 5 years now, I love her. She is developing our original content and also developing developing concepts with our team and our producers. And one of the things that has sort of differentiated us and been a real point of pride over the years is that the majority of our original shows, we actually develop the concepts in-house, and our producers are coming up with the concepts and in some cases even hosting them. So like As She Rises, Teaching Texas, Winning Wisconsin, like Backlash, which we just launched with Audible, like these are shows that our producers just, they come up with the ideas. Emily helps them hone the pitch. We find distributors, or we just decide like this is a great idea. We're gonna greenlight it and produce it ourselves. So that's on the sort of original side of things. On the brand side, sometimes we have clients who come to us with a fully baked concept. This is the talent, this is the goal, this is the format broadly. Help us make it. We still like to start with the sort of initial sort of discovery period to make sure that all of those pieces align truly with their goals and that we can help them accomplish those. But in other cases, and this happened, I spoke about Pfizer before, like when they came to us in the early days, they were like, we've never done anything in audio. What should we be doing? And this was one of the most fun development processes we went through because we just came up with like 10 different ideas, including one that I still think we should do, which is like the history of Viagra.
Oh, that would be great.
It's an amazing
Yeah.
story.
There didn't someone do, like, the history of aspirin or something recent the Tylenol something or other?
Oh, yeah. That to me is, like, what podcasting is for. It's like those kinds of, take this very well-known thing, but then, like, distill it to its most pure and give you the behind the scenes. But, they didn't that wasn't their first foray.
Yeah. Yeah, someone put a nix on that.
They were probably also like, "Why are all these women, like, coming in here, like, wanting to do this Viagra show?" But no, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, our producers, as I referenced before, like, everyone here works on every part of the business. So, our producers are working on, like, 3 to 5 shows at any given time, obviously at different phases of development, and so as a result, we're bringing, like, our there we don't treat our branded shows differently than we treat our original shows. It's the same people who are making them. So, the creativity and the thinking is the same. So yeah, we'll go through that process with our partners and we'll usually come to the table with like 5 or 6 directions. Some of them are more format oriented, some of them are more story oriented, and then we sort of define what's going to be the right approach and then we'll move them into pre-production and then we go.
And how do you think about marketing? Is there any difference with, like, your branded properties versus your originals?
There is certainly no one size fits all, as you know. I think for a long time we in this space relied on the podcast marketing playbook and it used to really work. Or I would say for the first year or 2, 2019, 2020, there were a whole bunch of things that, like, if you did them and the show was good, you could get to, like, 10, 20,000 downloads per episode pretty easily. That is no longer the case. You could have the best art, the best cross promos, the best PR plan, platform relationships, check, check, check those boxes, and still not find audience. And that's because it's just so damn crowded. And as a result, like, we have to be thinking outside the box. Of course, those are all the low-hanging fruit elements, but particularly with brand clients and, like, let's say we're doing a B2B podcast, LinkedIn is gonna be much more part of the strategy than if we're doing something with, like, a brand that's more D2C and it's, like, it's reaching Gen Z and we're, like, using TikTok more as a channel. So, we out of home, I mentioned we've done some experiential work, like, we we really have to push ourselves constantly to be creative on the marketing side, and I have been very concerted about hiring people to manage our marketing who don't necessarily have marketing backgrounds, because I find that that pushes them to bring a new lens, and a lot of the playbook can just be learned. It's not rocket science, or, you could outsource the elements that require very specific expertise, but yeah. If you wanna make an impact, you gotta be thinking out of the box.
And do you have any examples of where that's, like, been really effective?
We worked with this company called Greenhouse Software, which is a sort of HR platform. It's like Lever, if you know them also. And their audience, their user, their primary client is HR professionals, like the head of HR at any sort of growth size company that's able to afford using Greenhouse. So we made a couple of seasons of a show with them. It was all thought leadership. In some cases, they were also using it as a sales enablement tool to bring in either existing clients or potential clients to speak about their challenges, their successes within sort of HR hiring, that sort of thing. And when it came to marketing, it was a really niche audience. So you know, doing audio ads on SiriusXM or Span was not going to be the move. There are lots of niche. I had to learn all about this, like HR newsletters, finding those Substackers, finding those influencers and doing little collaborations with them. Fine, that's all sort of off the shelf. But the thing that we did that was so fun is I was thinking about, okay, what are the kinds of like barter or cross promos that we've done that have been really effective and how can we like translate that into this world? So Greenhouse has business partnerships with a whole suite of other offerings that are used within sort of onboarding and HR. So like Checker, the background check company, or you know, Bamboo HR. It's like another HR software. They have all of these relationships, and in some cases, they actually have APIs that support these integrations so that you can have sort of like a one-stop shop for your team. So we basically did fake ads for these integrations on the show, and we produced these like really beautiful ads. And in exchange, we asked these companies to push this on their newsletters, on their social, like amongst their team, because they have the same exact target audience. And to the extent that somebody who's using Checker who doesn't yet know about Greenhouse or could benefit from like these really beautiful episodes that we were doing, it felt to me like this is good for their business relationship. This is the exact right audience, and it's using the tools that we're already using, like making integrated branded content, but in a way that's like we're not exchanging any money and we're just getting the value of the marketing. So that was a fun one.
With a lot of branded shows, like, it's great when and if people listen, but, like, that's not always the goal. The goal is often just to build these relationships, and, like, the show is a tool to help do that. Same as, like, a CEO publishing a book. Like, it is a way to get in the door, to get interviewed, to, call somebody up on the phone and say, "I wanna interview you for this thing that I'm doing,"
Yeah.
and it builds the relationship, so I really like that example.
Yeah. I'll give you one other example that I love, which is, we also do internally facing podcasts for brands. And we did this amazing, really, really, it's like one of my favorite projects. And it makes me so sad that we can't share it publicly. But we did a project with GE a couple years ago, like ahead of their big sort of reorg. We wanted to find a way to like get the 90,000 GE employees to listen. We put a calendar invite on every single employee's calendar with the link to listen. And it worked.
Did you use a tracking link?
We used a tracking link and the invite came from the CEO. So everybody was like, "What is this?" And then clicked on it and it was the podcast.
How many people are we talking about?
I think that we saw a conversion of like 26,000 or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like really, I mean, talk about impact. Like, I because we were using some internal platform, we actually weren't so clear on listen through rates, but this is like it continues to be a very big pain point for internally facing podcasts.
That's incredible. You should write up a case study, anonymize it if you can't share the info, but, like, that's a really, really fun idea. You do work with a lot of different companies in podcasting, a lot of branded folks. You work with ACast, obviously, you work with iHeart, you work with many others, like, how do those collaborations work? Like, what does that look like when it comes across your desk?
One of the things that I love about this space is it actually really does feel small still. Even though there are so many podcasts, I would say, like, perhaps the inner sanctum or the sort of stalwarts amongst us, like, what are there? Like, maybe 100 people who are, like, executives at podcasting companies from, like, our size to iHeart, and we really all are friends. And, when the Acast news came, like, I got phone calls from, like, competitors of mine that were like, "This meant more to me than anything." Like, I really do feel like it's friendship, it's real community. So in terms of, like, how those deals work, we've just people know what we're good at this point, and so we of course are doing proactive selling all the time and making sure that like, Wondery is aware of what we're doing and, staying top of mind for people like as new shiny objects enter the chat. But I think because of this like sense of community and friendliness, like people just know what's going to be good for us. So, we do a ton of work with iHeart. There's so many great people there and we're just in constant communication and they know which shows we're like really eager to get our hands on. And so when those open up, they walk them our way. You have to like it's a two-way street. Like we have to be delivering good work for them. It's like no one's doing us any favors, that's for sure. But we we just have there's only a handful of buyers, as you know, and therefore, like, you can get pretty deep with each of them.
I can tell you that I've spoken with some of the folks that you've worked with at iHeart, and they have, like, the most brilliant things to say about you.
Oh, that's
So
so nice. I really love them. It's been really great, and I have to say, like, it was important to me, and also, of course, important to ACast because we have a lot of revenue coming from iHeart. Like, it was important for all of us to know that that could continue, like, once the acquisition happened.
so that is continuing.
That is continuing, and I really appreciate that both companies, like, understand where the competition ends and where the collaboration can start, and, iHeart and Acast already work with each other in a whole number of ways because different sales teams have different skill sets, and they're in terms of international sales and programmatic like, there's a lot of ways that I don't know how much I'm allowed to disclose or not, but, like, there is an existing relationship there, and we can help sort of support and buttress that.
Can you walk me through, if you remember, your first interaction with Acast and, like, how that engagement began and developed over time?
We have done the least amount of work with Acast compared to some of the other platforms and buyers. So we knew them the least, but, like, we had relationships with Veronica and Grace Ross and a couple others. But in terms of, like, the deal process, they had just hired this guy, Greg Glunday, who's the new chief business officer, and I knew that we were ready to figure out what the next chapter might look like. And also, like, we were always sort of engaged with sort of big business partnership conversations. I reached out to him. I wanted to just get to know him, and we just started talking and really hit it off, and,
And at this point, you were, like, in a limited fashion, like, actually doing work with them already, right? Like, producing things for them?
we had never produced anything for Acast. We had one show that we were hosting on Acast and monetizing a little bit with them. Is actually the show that we did in collaboration with the 19th News called The Amendment, and but that was, like, a pretty small partnership. So, yeah, I mean, one might have assumed that, like, the iHeart work could have evolved into some sort of larger strategic partnership, just given how, like, the scale and scope of what we were doing with them. But, for a whole bunch of reasons, that was not the right, like, ultimate home for us, and Acast really was. And part of it is that, like, obviously Acast has a creative team that has been really leaning into I'm using our as Acast now, like our new thesis, which is that it's podcast first, but not only. And that has been WMN's thesis for some time as well. And, this creative team has been selling in these activations to brands that are true omni-channel, which, as you know, is a departure from Acast's bread and butter, which is, scale. It's all like just massive scale. It's actually 135,000 plus shows.
Wow. Okay.
I think there's something like 400 million or 500 million monthly uniques, massive global scale. And so this creative team has been teaching also Acast's partners how to, maybe not necessarily like how to think differently, but like how to understand Acast's capabilities in a newfound manner as the space evolves. And so we will be coming in to help sort of buttress that existing work and also add production capability, which they don't have any at the moment. So, like, we're bringing 20 producers over, and all of the strategy work and the like really the white glove sort of custom service that I know you guys do as well. That is that's all new capability. And so when we talk about like iHeart before, they already, they do that and they do that beautifully. So any media company, any tech platform that's like in this space needs to have like the 360 approach and the touch points so that you can nurture clients and give them everything they need in a single locale.
We had Amber Smith from Ruby on recently and Will Pearson from iHeart, and
I love those are two of the greatest people in the world.
but the way that they had explained, like, their model at Ruby was big brand comes in, they say, "We want to put $1,000,000 into the podcast space, like, how should we best do that?" And Ruby will actually produce a show that helps, strengthen the message that they wanna get out, and then the advertising is in part to promote the product or the brand or the call to action, and in part to promote the podcast.
Mhm.
Do you view that as kind of some version of what the future of Acast Creative Suite will be or studio?
I have always wished that Ruby sold podcast creative as a standalone line item instead of it being part and parcel of a media spend. I think that, and you can probably relate to this, Jeff, like it should not, podcast custom development should never be added value. It should be the centerpiece.
It's a nice luxury to be able to have that as added value.
And again, I'm not throwing shade at all because I think they really do beautiful work. And again, there's such a massive there's some massive company that they're obviously able to make this work, but like I think that clients appreciate the content and the process more when that's the lead. Like the lead is the storytelling and then the halo is the media spend. And, like for us, and this will continue, when we do media spend for clients, we're not only executing that in podcasting. So like for iHeart, for Ruby, like, it's the media spend is like across iHeart's network.
Radio and broadcast and podcast.
Exactly. So for us, we're not just gonna like funnel the entire budget over to Acast to like the Acast platform. Like certainly some of it should go there. And we have like preferred insights and like understanding of where exactly it will fit and we can get, preferential treatment and all that, like amazing. But like sometimes, as we were talking about before, like sometimes the budget should actually really be spent on LinkedIn or it should really be spent on YouTube or it should really be spent on an awesome dinner party. Like there's lots of other ways to slice this to get the ultimate impact that a brand needs. And I think that will be our differentiator is that also this studio is audio first, podcast first, but not only.
I have a theory about Acast, and
Do tell.
I don't I don't know if this is, like, anything special or if it's juicy or whatever, but I think Acast launched in order to get bought by Spotify. I think Spotify decided to go in a different direction, and I think Acast has spent the last few years trying to kind of, like, refine its direction, and that, is you guys, is Podchaser, is, like, the massive expansion, is the global work, and I'm obviously, like, reducing this a little bit, like, Acast has done amazing work forever. They were one of the first organizations I spoke to that did programmatic spend. They were able to give you this amazing hosting platform that you could not get anywhere else at that point in time when they first launched it. I love everything that Acast was and is doing. But that's my vision of, like, kind of their journey, and I just am really excited because it feels to me like Acast is finding its footing or has found its footing several years ago and is, like, really, like, they have a direction and they're going in it, and you guys are a part of that, and it makes me really happy. What do you think the vision is for the future of Acast?
I know that the vision and part of the vision in acquiring us was thinking about US expansion. Acast is so well respected and has such incredible scale and impact on the global stage, and in the US has always been trailing, sort of purposefully. It's a Swedish company and the huge presence in the UK and, you know, part of hiring Greg and part of, Ricardo, who had come over from Spotify a couple years ago, like building out the US team is really important. The US is still, I mean, obviously I'm US first thinking, but that's a really important piece of the puzzle. And then the other thing that I would say is like Acast is a tech platform and it's also a creator company. And there's so much exciting stuff happening in the creator economy right now. And I think Acast is 5 steps ahead of some of our competitors in thinking about how to service those creators. So in terms of the vision, I think it's all about growth and doing work for clients and advertisers that's best in class. And then the rest will come. We'll see what happens.
So do you guys have any like productions lined up for the next year, or is it kind of your existing slate moving over to ACast, or are they putting a lot of stuff in your basket now?
All of our existing work is coming with us. We're keeping all of our original content, which is really exciting. And for the brand side of things, we have a couple of new clients that are coming up that I will not reveal on this podcast, but a really like incredible range from names that you would know to maybe names that you would not know because they're like, B2B financial services brands. So we'll continue to have that breadth. And then, the other thing that I'm really excited to explore with Veronica and Tim and the Creator Network is previously ACAST has not been able to provide ACAST shows with production support. And now they might be able to. Like if the economics are right, we now have this incredible in-house team. So we'd love to be able to support creators with production help and we'll see. But at the moment, nothing has yet like landed in our basket. We're being like really thoughtful about this integration and taking our time with it. I've never worked at a big company before, so this is all new to me too. So day by day.
Did ACast do original productions before?
So they did one. It was produced by Ben Adair at Western Sound. It was like the Bank Robber Diaries or something like that. It was so good. This was like maybe 2021 or 2022. And, they deficit financed it and then sold it across the network. And that was when, as you know, distributors were launching far more sort of limited run series. That is really not Acast's primary. It's an ad network, right? So like it's really about supporting the creators that have pre-existing shows and they're acquiring new shows and bringing in new networks. Like we just signed this amazing new partnership with TED. So I believe that original content will always be a part of what we do and by extension what Acast does, but in the same way that we at WMN have been very thoughtful, concerted about what shows we launch to ensure that there's commercial viability, the same will hold true as part of Acast.
Do you think that in the same way that ACast is trying to expand in the US, like will your work expand internationally?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So we are technically global. So we will be based in the US, but we will technically have global function, which means that I hope that we'll be able to travel globally and hire people globally and expand this work really globally. And Jenny and I will be sitting sort of, we work for Greg now, and that's also global function.
What do you think this says about kind of the rest of the production landscape? You think we'll see more of these partnerships and acquisitions in the future?
I certainly hope so for my friends that want that for themselves. I do think that consolidation and acquisition is not over. I also really believe 2025 is going to be a great year for podcasting. And what I know to be true is that good content always wins. And this capability will always be necessary. And yes, I think there's incredible strides in AI. And I'm so excited to see how we can also use AI to like improve what we do. But custom, creative, white glove approach, really understanding brands, like getting into their DNA and supporting them through this world of podcasting that is still unfolding before our eyes is so, so necessary. So I think money continues to pour into the space. And when money pours in, acquisition follows. And so, yeah, if that's what production companies want, I think that there are still outcomes to be had. And also, there's still so much space and so much potential for like just running a really good small business. Like, we were profitable. We're everything was it's all good. Like it this just presented a really incredible opportunity to have impact beyond what we possibly could have done as an independent. And so that was really appealing to me and Jenny.
What are you most looking forward to this year?
Hopefully I'll go to Sweden at some point. I've never been.
Well, thank you, Shira. This was really fun. I'm glad that we got to connect.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much to Shira Atkins for chatting with us today. You can find her at LinkedIn at Shira Atkins or at wondermedianetwork.com. For more podcast-related news, info, and takes, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Jeff Umbro. Podcast Perspectives is a production of the Podglomerate. If you're looking for help producing, marketing, or monetizing your podcast, you can find us at podglomerate.com, shoot us an email at listen@thepodglomerate.com, or follow us on all socials at PodglomeratepOds. This episode was produced by Chris Boniello and myself, Jeff Umbro. This episode was edited and mixed by Jose Roman. And thank you to our marketing team, Joni Deutsch, Madison Richards, Morgan Swift, Annabella Penna, and Perry Gross, and a special thank you to Dan Christo. Thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you all in a few weeks.